welcome to Relationship Ready. It's Kevin Markman. Thanks for coming back. Today on Relationship Ready, we're going to talk about a relationship with Steve Farrington. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about you and what people might want to know about you.
Okay. So I am a gay man in my 40s, and I am what is known in the gay world as a bear. And in case you don't know, that's basically for guys who are kind of bigger, hairier, kind of don't maybe fit the stereotype of being like a younger, trim kind of gay man. Think John Goodman or, someone like that, but who's gay. So That's a little bit about me. I'm an educator. I'm a language teacher, and I'm from a small town in Western New York. And one of my jokes is that it's not that I'm a bear because I'm like super masculine or anything like that. It's more like that I'm a bear because I'm a failure at being other kinds of gay. That's anyway a little joke that I have. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Yes.
Yep.
And I appreciate that very much. And today we're going to talk about a relationship. So tell us about the beginning of this relationship.
Okay. So a relationship I'm going to talk about is I had a relationship with a younger guy who also in the bear community. We say a cub because he was like in his 20s. And part of the humor, part of the challenge there was that I was about 40 and he was in his 20s. So I'm definitely like a Gen Xer and everything that goes along with being a Gen Xer. And he is definitely a millennial. And we're still in touch a little bit. We're not, really that much in touch, but we're still friendly and stuff like that. So,
So how did the relationship start at the beginning?
Okay. We actually were at a place called Provincetown, which is in, it's at the very tip of Cape Cod. Some of you may have heard of it. It's basically a place where it's in the summer. It's this little enclave where it's like very bohemian, and it's like a huge gay community there. So we met actually at a dance. It sounds like almost romantic. We met at a dance, and it was funny because we just met through some friends and we started dancing and we really hit it off and stuff like that. So
yeah. All right. And you were going there with friends, with family. What was the intention of the trip and where you?
I was just there for a summer, just to kind of have a little fun. I actually went up for just like a day and a half. And I was going to just sort of be very bohemian and just sleep in my car, or like I ended up like camping with a friend that I knew there, and it was just kind of this like very spur of the moment, spontaneous road trip kind of thing. And I didn't even have a reservation or anything like that. So I ended up meeting this guy, and we hit it off, and then we ended up dating for about 2.5 years. So,
well,
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So the first night you met was dancing. It went well.
Yep.
And you spent a day and a half.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together. Quite a lot of time together there. And it was just kind of this party celebration kind of atmosphere, and neither one of us really knew if it was going to go anywhere. But we ended up keeping in touch, and we ended up, a few weeks later we started dating, and it was fun, and it was one of those kind of like really fun summer romances that kind of blossomed into something else, and we kind of went from there. Yeah. Okay,
so summer romance, day and a half. How did you end it, leaving the day and a half?
We ended it just as that we'd like to see each other again, and that we kind of just see where it goes. Neither of us really had like an expectation that it would necessarily lead to something serious, but
but you connected enough to exchange information and say, let's see where this goes and go from there.
Exactly. Okay. Yep.
And then what happened next? A couple weeks later.
So basically we started seeing each other, and to make a long story short, he lives down in the Hudson Valley, and I live here in Rochester. So it was kind of a long distance thing. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then you were talking a lot, or did you start to visit each other, or how did you decide that was building from there?
I went down there to Hudson Valley. He came up to Rochester a few times, and then we kind of were doing back and forth. We ended up having like a bit of a road trip situation to Montreal, and I was very taken with him, and we just had a lot of fun together. Looking back on it, I guess you could actually consider that some of what I did in the beginning was a little bit of what you and your profession would call love bombing, right? Okay. Like we had a little romantic trip to Montreal. We went on like a little horse-drawn carriage ride through old Montreal, and I kind of swept him off his feet a little bit, and it was kind of like that,
Okay. So it was very romantic. It was the beginning of the relationship. There was a lot of connection and a lot of support and lust and feelings and intensity.
Yep. Very much. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you used the term love bombing. So for those who are are like, love bombing, what's that? Tell us
Yeah.
a little more about love bombing and what you mean by that.
So, to make a very long story short, I don't want to get too much into my private life, but I was just very taken with this guy, and I'm not even going to use his name, but I was very taken with him, and I just kind of, it was very much an infatuation kind of situation, and I guess I really wanted to like win him over and stuff. So love bombing is basically when people, if you think of the show Friends, when Ross with the British girl Emily like kind of sends her flowers, and like it becomes very intense right away because you really want to kind of win over the person. Mm-hmm. That's what people refer to as love bombing, and I didn't know that at the time. You know, I've only since learned that what I was doing was love bombing with them. So
okay, so that's the thing you learned.
Yeah.
From that too, and that was how you felt at the time and what you wanted to do. Yeah. Okay, and that was well received at the time.
Yep.
As well. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So we started dating, and
and what? Yeah. You were very taken. What was he taken with you?
Well, I guess, he really liked the attention, and let's see. I think at that time I was about 30 pounds lighter, and I was kind of, in the bear community, I was considered kind of almost a little bit of a muscle bear, in the sense that I was very athletic, and I looked good in a tank top, and I was an older guy, and I had a job, I had a secure job and everything like that, and I think I represented a certain amount of security for him, and fun, and I was also like a very caring, warm person. I think that's kind of what attracted me to him, and I think he kind of felt swept off his feet a little bit. And for me, it was just the excitement of a romance with somebody that I was really into, and also I think I was taken a little bit by the fact that he was younger.
Okay.
So
okay. Yeah. So you each had things that you were pursuing and interested in, finding out more about.
Yep.
And that was the initial thing. You had the carriage rides. And, and the attraction.
Yep.
And then where did it move from there?
So from there, we dated for about 2.5 years. And one thing that's very interesting that ties into what you do is a friend of ours actually gave us this book called Attached, which you probably have read this book. So if people are familiar with attachment styles, it's a really important thing to check out. You can Google it, or there's a book Attached. Do you have a book that you are interested in, or do you have a book that you consider a good source for that?
There's a number for attachment in particular. There's a number of different things, but for relationships kind of stuff, there's lots of books on that. Getting the Love You Want, Harville, Hendrix, and that kind of stuff is a helpful one too. We can put that in the notes as well too. If people are interested in finding out more about it. So people gave you, both of you, the
at one point toward the end of our relationship, actually, we started having some issues and stuff, and basically, looking back on it now, I feel that we had our attachment styles were definitely a big part of it. So we actually took a survey with one of the books we had, and we found out that we were both in the securely attachment zone. There's kind of like various quadrants of attachment. I guess it's called the attachment theory.
Yep.
And basically, we found out, we took these surveys, we were both in the quadrant of securely attached, but the tension was this. He was toward the insecure spectrum within that quadrant, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I found out that we found out as time went on, he was rather insecurely attached. He was sort of insecure in his attachment. And I was while still within that quadrant of secure, I was toward I forget the term, but it was actually like, sort of more independent. I think the term that I've even heard is like dismissive. I don't know if that's really the term, but
that didn't really fit for you. But
basically, and this is where it kind of comes into also the generational difference. I think that as a Gen Xer, I was a latchkey kid in the 80s, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Having grown up in the 80s, I think I was much more sort of independent, and I grew up in a time where I was a bit of a latchkey kid. I came home and I read. I was always very self-sufficient and whatnot.
And you go home and take care of yourself and do your chores, get some food, do what you need to do independently.
Exactly. And I've always been someone who, I definitely enjoy being in a relationship, but I also, I guess I'm a little bit, I don't know if the term is annoyed, might not be the right term, but having someone being in a relationship with somebody who's rather insecure, doesn't really work for me, is what I found out over the long period of time, over the long term.
You feel like you don't have as much space or don't...
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And whereas I think that for various reasons, I think that I liked that initially. I liked frankly, I liked the attention and the sense of the feeling of being needed and loved by someone who was rather insecure. As time went on, I think that insecurity kind of eventually wore on me. And I think that his perception of me was that I was rather aloof, and my perception of him was that he was rather clingy and needy. And I think that eventually, as time went on, and I'm trying to say this in a very diplomatic way because the person, and I'm not using his name, the person is a very nice person. He's a great guy, actually. I think he's a very a wonderful person. I think he's also a very psychologically healthy person. But through no fault of his own, through some family dynamics that he had, I believe that he was toward the insecure part of that quadrant. And again, no judgment, no fault of his own.
And everybody has their own issues.
Yeah, everyone has their own attachment styles. It's part of their psychological makeup, maybe some of their nature versus nurture and everything like that. Whereas I think I was a little bit more toward the sort of independent part. Both of us being within the quadrant, I believe, of the securely attachment.
Which is why it lasted for that time.
Yeah,
also.
yeah, I would say so, yeah. I would say so, yep. Right. I would say that I was, for for over 2 years, I was pretty committed to the relationship. I definitely, cared. I continue to care about him a lot as a person. And I would definitely say that I was emotionally invested very much. But as time went on, I would say that tension within attachment styles eventually became one of the tensions within our relationship.
And was that something you had the book? You both were looking at that kind of stuff. Is that something you communicated about during the relationship as well too?
Toward the end of it, essentially, yeah. And there were other things, and again, there were other things that I don't really want to get into, but there were things that I did in retrospect, probably that were not so great, and sometimes we just had a miscommunication. There were things that we both did, I think that one could find fault with, and again, I'm certainly don't mean to imply that I am at all.
You each had your own.
I don't mean to criticize anyone, and I also don't believe that there's no one is like quote unquote at fault or anything like that. I think we just kind of found out that we were not really compatible for each other.
Okay. Can I go back a little bit? There was a point where, if you can look back or talk about the initial relationship started and it shifted to, it was long distance, and where was the point where it was like, oh, I really like to move into love? Was there a moment? Was there a time? Was there something that happened between you that shifted to get to a deeper emotional connection than there was initially, or did you have that right at first coming together?
In retrospect, it was probably an infatuation that grew into love. I would say a few months in, we used the L word a couple, 2 or 3 months in, and I always really cared for this person quite a bit, and still continue to care about the person. Obviously,
And did that help maintain the distance, or did you come together?
We saw each other on most weekends. We saw each other on most weekends, actually.
So it became a regular weekend thing.
Yeah. Okay. We spent a lot of holidays and then most weekends together. Either he would come up here or I'd go down there.
Okay.
And we spent a lot of time communicating and talking every night. And, these days with FaceTime and whatnot, it's pretty easy to be in touch with people even if they're a few hours away. So,
so that was able to maintain the support and the connections and the relationship through that. So people who have struggled with long distance thing, that can be successful for a while. Yeah. And you didn't end up staying in the same town, but you maintained it for 2.5 years in a distance relationship?
Yep, yeah. Well? Okay. And like I said, I think we were both pretty committed to making it work, and we both, even though we were 5 hours away from each other, we saw each other almost every weekend. Or at any given month, we probably saw each other 3 weekends per month.
Nice.
Either here or there or somewhere else, whether it be Albany or whatever.
Okay. So it shifted from the infatuation, connection, and being able to identify the differences in age and the differences in interests is something that you had in common, and then use the L word and started to love. What were the things that you had in common that were about you, that you were like, this is what I'm offering to a relationship, that maintained it and that went, okay, now we're in this secure kind of relationship that felt good for you, that was able to maintain it?
I don't know. Well, to be frank, some of the stuff is kind of rather personal,
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
If there's anything general that you want to say, like qualities that you have or anything that you're like, these are things that work well in relationship.
I would just say that we had a lot of fun together.
Okay.
We were able to, I would say that we had a lot of fun together. We were each other's best friend as well as lover. And I would say that despite our age differences, we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. And then there are some personal things that I'd kind of rather not get into. But
did you feel like you walked over the bridge of being able to have the age thing not be an issue? For a while as well too. Okay. And that was through communication and having the fun. And seeing each other most weekends and.
I would say so. Yeah. Okay. I would say so. But I would say that probably, again, maybe the generational difference may have also compounded a little bit the difference in attachment styles, perhaps.
Okay, so generational attachment styles.
Yep.
So it went well, and how long would you say it was going well for before it started to break down?
Probably about the first 2 years. It went fairly well. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so it was a pretty happy, healthy relationship for about 2 years.
I would say so.
Well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say so. And then as time went on, various things kind of reared their heads. And there were things that I have to own the fact that there are things that I did that made him feel insecure. Things that I felt were exaggerated a little bit. Things that I felt should not have made someone feel insecure. But nevertheless, I have to own the fact that those were things that I did that made him feel insecure for whatever reason. So again, I don't mean to imply, I think whenever a relationship doesn't work out, it's often, it's often a combination of many factors, and it's certainly nobody's like at fault, So I certainly was not perfect in that respect.
And it sounds like you were learning and identifying kind of more about yourself during that also.
Yeah.
And then as it started to break down, what was the point where you knew that it wasn't going to continue and you would be better off without being in a relationship?
So one thing I would like to say too, I'm not sure, I'd love your perspective on this as a therapist. There's a concept I got from How I Met Your Mother where they talked about how every relationship that you're in is like a reaction to your previous relationship, or there's a school of thought that believes that. Without getting into any details and without revealing personal things about a new one, I will say that I had a previous relationship where I felt that a lot of my needs were not met, and I felt that in a previous relationship there wasn't enough tenderness and warmth and affection, in a previous relationship. So when I was with this other person, the fact that he was very, very nurturing and very warm and very sweet and very kind and everything like that, I think was what initially attracted me to him so much, is that that's just that warmth and everything like that. And I think that what I perceived as warmth, but by the way, the person is a very warm, sweet person, I think that as time went on, my perception of that being warmth and affection, I began to kind of feel like, oh man, this is like clinginess almost a little bit, like this person is being dramatic. This person is being, I kind of felt like this person is being a bit maybe dramatic, perhaps a bit clingy, and the insecurity was really was bothering me. And I kind of felt like the person was finding fault with me all the time. And, just kind of always just finding fault with me, and it just
and you couldn't find a solution out of that, and instead just continue to feel like that.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Okay. And again, I want to stress that this is just my perception, and obviously that I was not a saint, and I was not. This is nobody's fault.
You own your parts of it.
Yeah.
Too. And it's interesting. You got that from How I Met Your Mother kind of thing too. And do you want me to respond to?
Go for it. Yeah.
Because there's a couple parts to it, and one is we bring us to our relationships. So whatever are things that you're talking about you were a more latchkey kid and you were more independent. You bring that independence to whatever relationship you have, and then we also find attraction in similar kind of either values or similar kind of activities or similar kind of things, which is where there's a grain of salt in every, or a grain of truth in every every old phrase. But people, when they say we have types, well, the types are sometimes projections of different parts of what we're looking for in a relationship, whether that's nurturance more, or whether that's someone to build us up, or whether that's someone to criticize us if we're doing it in a less healthy way. And we bring that with us into the relationships. And the other part, the second part of what you're saying with that too, is the stages of the relationships, which is why we do this. And I ask beginning, middle, and ends of relationships, because in the beginning is all the positive things that are warm and wonderful, and that you become infatuated with each other with, and those become later on in a relationship. Those things were endearing in the beginning, and those become annoying later in the relationship, and then those things that grate at you, and working through those in ways that you were attempting to do, like looking through attachment books, looking at your own issues, looking at what your parts are and what their parts are the ways to work through the relationships. And we can work through some of them, but some of it's working on ourselves, and some of it's working on the relationship. So, but those endearing things, when they become annoying, if you can make them endearing again, it's great, but it's a really hard thing to do. And that's what breaks down a lot of relationships.
And to make a very long story short, the previous relationship, I've been in three major gay relationships in my life. The first one, in my opinion, was not affectionate enough. The second one, with this person from Hudson Valley, was quite affectionate and quite warm and everything like that. And it eventually got to be a little too suffocating, a little too much. And I'm happy to report that in my third relationship that I've been in since 3.5 years, going on 4 years actually, it's just right in the middle. It's just, I feel like I'm right in the Goldilocks zone where it's like I have my space, but I also have a lot of affection from the person, my current partner, actually my current husband, my current and hopefully permanent husband. It's very loving, it's very affectionate, he's very kind, it's very sweet, but he also gives me some space to be me, and it's not overwhelmingly, it's not too suffocating, and I feel like it's just a perfect balance. So I feel like I had this bowl of porridge over here, and then I had this bowl of porridge over here, and now I've got the one that's just right, and I'm very, very happy. And again, I have nothing but love and affection for my two previous partners. They're both great guys, and we're still friendly, and I care about them very much. And I think so much about it is finding what works for you, and finding out what kind of relationship you need, finding out what's right for you. And I think that's what the courtship process is all about, is just to find out what works for you. And if it's not working for you, having the courage to walk away, And so to your point, eventually these things just kept grating on both of us, and we just were fighting kind of toward the end and arguing a lot back and forth. And even though it was very difficult, it was very, very difficult actually, because I really loved and cared about him, but I was like, it's just not working, and we need to take a break. So at first we just kind of initially took a break, and then back and forth, I don't want to get into it, but back and forth, drama. And then we eventually decided, no, we needed to definitively call this off. And it was a very hard thing to do, because I really did care a lot about him. And it was really a difficult few months for both of us, actually. But time has shown that was the right decision. I'm happy to report that the Hudson Valley guy is in a very happy place now, in a very happy relationship. And I myself am also in a very happy relationship. We're not in touch very much anymore, but I'm super happy for him. We're Facebook friends again. We kind of check in every once in a while. And again, wonderful person. Just I would say that, attachment styles, expectations. Definitely some of it was my fault. I hate to use the word fault, but some of it was on me for sure.
Responsibility.
But
and that's wonderful that you as a bear, that you have figured out a Goldilocks relationship, and that one was too hot a porridge. And then you found the balance of that too. So it sounds like in this relationship you also learned some things out of this relationship too, either about yourself or about relationships. So can you talk a little bit about what you learned about this relationship?
Yeah, I think every relationship every relationship, like every friendship or every relationship we have with people, but certainly every romantic relationship should be a chance for you to grow and to learn about yourself and to learn about the world and learn about the other person. And I learned a lot. Again, I'll just say bachelor number one, I learned that I needed a lot more. I needed a lot more affection from my relationship. Bachelor number two showed me that I needed a little bit less intensity. I needed a little bit less affection, or a little bit less. What's the word I'm looking for? I needed it to be a little bit less intense. Yeah, I needed it to be a little bit less intense, and then
more flowing.
And a little more chill. If you will, as the kids say. And then bachelor number three, it's just right. So I think that any relationship that's healthy, you learn about yourself and you kind of learn what works for you.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you learned that that affection was really important, but the level of affection for you was what was important to be able to balance for you.
There's a term that I really love. I came across about a year or two ago called ambivert. And I always thought of myself. Well, when I was a kid, I kind of thought of myself as kind of a bit of an introvert for a while. And then as an adult, I've been much more of an extrovert. I'm an educator. I love to be in a classroom. I feel like I walk into a classroom and I kind of kind of have Mr. Charisma. I kind of take control of the classroom a little bit. And sometimes when I'm out socially, I like to work the room a little bit, and I kind of turn on the charisma and stuff like that. But I've really learned in my 40s, especially, that I'm very much an ambivert, in the sense that I really love to be with people. I'm very much a people person, but then I really need my space sometimes. Sometimes I just need to just go to the park and be alone and
input.
Yeah. And I think that for my relationship with bachelor number two, shall we say, it was just a little bit too intense for me, and a little bit too intense. It would be the best way I would describe it. And again, through no fault of anyone. And again, I try to say that without judgment.
Yes. Yeah, I think that comes across really well too.
Good. So, yeah, hope so.
Do you feel like there's anything else you learned from the relationship that would be important that other people can relate to, or that you related to, or were like, I wish I learned that before?
I think you just have to go through it. I think Oscar Wilde, another famous gay guy, said nothing truly valuable can ever be taught. Right. So I think sometimes you have to live things. You have to live through things, and you have to kind of. It's trial and error, right? You have to kind of learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I share some of the humor, since Kevin and I know each other
that
through
would
the
be
comedy?
Wonderful.
All right.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll just share a couple of humorous situations that this person would not mind my sharing, because they were just very funny. Again, Gen Xer with dating a millennial. He was not. We had some different cultural references. He was really into Amanda Bynes, and some of you may know who that is. So he kind of showed me some clips from growing up as a kid in the 90s and the 2000s. He found some clips on YouTube, and they were funny, and it was kind of fun to learn about that. I was showing him old sketches of SNL from the 80s and 90s. I introduced him to a lot of the Mike Myers, Linda Richmond, and all that stuff, and in Living Color, and things that he hadn't been aware of. So it was kind of fun that we shared some pop cultural stuff. Anyway, he was not really very much into pop culture, so I'll share three quick anecdotes. Number one, it was really funny because he was like, "Oh, we were talking about Star Wars one day, the Star Wars movies," and he was like, "Oh, I love that Star Wars." He's like, "Oh, what was the one?" He's like, "The Star Wars thing with the little village of the Indian bear people in the village," and I was like, "Frickin' Ewoks, Ewoks." And he's like, "Oh, is that what they're called?" And I'm like, "Yeah, frickin' Ewoks. They're not Indian bear people. It's not like Indian bear. It was it's not a village of Indian bear people, So that was hilarious. We got, and the thing is, Max has a great sense of humor, and he was able to laugh at himself. He saw the humor in that, and so that became kind of we would joke about that. I'm like, "Oh, the Indian bear." Anytime we'd see something with an Ewok or whatever, I'd be like, "Oh, it's like the Indian bear people, right?" So that was funny. Another one that was very funny was someone was talking about a comedian who was really popular about 5-10 years ago called Lisa Lampanelli. Do you know who that is?
Yeah.
So and Lisa Lampanelli was very popular among the gays 5-7 years ago. So at one point I kind of mentioned Lisa Lampanelli, and Max was like, "Oh, Lisa Lampanelli, wasn't she the mother of Dorothy or something like that? What's her name?" And I'm like, "Judy Garland?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I think you might be thinking of Liza Minnelli instead of Lisa Lampanelli." He's like, "Oh, isn't that the same person?" I'm like, "No, give me your freaking gay card. Gay card revoked." So that was we had a lot of laughs at that, but I've saved the best one for the last. I'll close with this. This is super hilarious. my OGT, my obviously gay trait, is that I am very into Broadway musicals and I love musicals, right? So I went through this time where I was torturing my ex with listening to Book of Mormon all the time. I was playing it all the freaking time. I had a little CD player in my car. He had to listen to it all. I feel bad. I feel bad for him. I tortured him with the Book of Mormon, right? And at one point in the Book of Mormon, they mentioned Donny Osmond, right? Like little Donny Osmond flair, right? And I stopped the CD. And I was like, so, do you know who Donny Osmond is? Because I knew he would have no idea who this was, right? And I'm like, do you know who Donny Osmond was? Or is? Or he's still alive, right? I was like, do you know who Donny Osmond is? And Max thinks about it for a second. He's like, Donny Osmond. Didn't he like bite the head off a rat or something? And I was like, oh my God. And I go, first of all, it was not a rat, it was a bat. He bit the head off a bat. And second of all, not Donny, it's Ozzy Osbourne, not Donny Osmond.
You got some reference.
Yeah. Donny Osmond is like this super. I go, Donny Osmond is like the super clean cut Mormon, and Ozzy Osbourne was like the king of rock and roll in the '80s.
Yes.
So of course I went on Facebook and I was like, when you date a millennial, this is what happens, blah, blah, blah. And one of my buddies from high school, who was like very much an 80s rock kind of guy, was like, break up with him immediately. So we had a lot of laughs. I had a lot of laughs over that, and I still think it's really funny. But,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
But anyway, advice I would say is if you find a special spark with somebody, see where it goes, say yes to love, give it a chance. Carpe diem. This last year, in the last year alone, I've had four close friends who've died, and it's very sad. I've got a funeral tomorrow and another one on Saturday, and two of them were straight. It's not like any kind of HIV. These two of them were straight guys. It's just that you never know when it's going to happen, folks. So seize happiness whenever you can find it, and take a chance on love, and take a chance on dating somebody. And I have no regrets at all about dating the person that I dated. He's a wonderful person, and I learned a lot about myself. I think he learned a lot about himself too. We've actually talked. We talked about a year ago where he was very sweet. He thanked me for the time that we had together, and he was able to experience a lot of things with me that he wouldn't have experienced otherwise. And likewise, I was also able to experience a lot with him, especially emotionally and everything, explore things about myself and everything. So again, wonderful person. We learned a lot. And again, I think if you can keep things in a positive way and, be caring about the other person, and part of that caring is to know when to walk away when it's just not working out. So
thank you. That's beautiful,
okay.
Steve.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining
Thank you, Kevin.
us. Appreciate it.
And again, no shade to anyone. And if my ex ever watches this video, I hope he doesn't actually watch this video. But if he does, you're a wonderful guy, and no shade at all. Okay.
And hopefully you know who Ozzy Osbourne and Donny Osmond are now.
And
you've learned.
Lisa Lampanelli.
Yes.
And Eliza Minnelli. Okay,
yes.
Very good.
Excellent.
Eliza with a Z. All right. Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for watching. This is Relationship Ready. If you like it, then subscribe, and follow more, and watch all of the other videos that we have coming at you too. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Take care.